Tonight's bedtime story is Back to School with Prickles the Hedgehog by Sarah Kate Howarth. It was a balmy summer evening in Sleepy Forest, and the forest floor was strewn with branches of elderflower, handfuls of laurel, and long tufts of cotton grass. The air sang with the sweet smell of wildflowers, and despite it being late in the day, sunlight still trickled its way in through the treetops, falling like stardust onto the floor below. Prickles the Hedgehog loved summer. It was his favourite season by far, and he looked forward to the tantalising promise of the summer holidays all year round. This year had been just perfect. There had been camping trips with Coco and Camo, where they roasted marshmallows together on a crackling campfire and whispered secrets into the flames. There had been a week spent at the seaside with his cousins, building the most intricate and impressive castles and sculptures out of the glittering golden sand. There had been afternoons spent paddling in the creek in the dappled sunlight, swinging high on the rope swing and dropping down into the turquoise water below with a terrific splash. There had been tree climbing and stargazing, horseback riding and cupcake decorating, pottery painting and paddleboarding. The list went on and on. Prickles' days had been filled with the most delightful and entertaining activities all summer long. Above all else, Prickles had loved to while away the summer evenings in his mother's spectacular library, which was nestled right inside their house. In fact, there was nothing that Prickles enjoyed more on a balmy summer's evening than curling up in the library's window seat, reading a storybook from cover to cover. And that's exactly what he was up to now. An open book balanced under his nose, munching his way through a crunchy red apple and devouring the text in front of him. Prickles was a voracious reader. Why, he must have read over 100 books this summer alone. He'd read about swashbuckling pirates on daring voyages across the 7 seas. He'd read about the travelling circus that mysteriously appeared on the outskirts of sleepy villages. He'd read about adventurous sailors thrown off course by the silken voices of mermaids and ending up stranded on desert islands. And he'd read about the special waterfall in a faraway kingdom that trickled and oozed with a chocolate so delicious it made anyone that tasted it do a flip in delight. The book that Prickles was currently reading was a tale of great intrigue, all about a young aardvark named Anthony, who was secretly a spy. But despite its captivating plot, Prickles was finding it unusually difficult to concentrate on the pages in front of him. He kept losing his place and having to start over, which was most unlike him. He sighed, and the gnawing feeling in his belly, which he had been trying very hard to ignore, grew even more insistent. "Bother," he said, tucking his brightly coloured bookmark in between the pages of the storybook and letting it fall shut. He gazed out of the window, taking in the beautiful view of Sleepy Forest silhouetted in the setting sun. The clouds were laced with crimson, and the sky had melted into a buttery pool of amber and marigold. But despite the breathtaking scene, Prickles' face stayed caught in a frown. A deep ridge puckered into his forehead. His tummy felt all twitchy, as if a kaleidoscope of butterflies were flitting furtively against the walls of his stomach, softly careering into one another. He'd been feeling like this for a little while now, ever since he'd begun to think about the new school term, which was fast approaching. It wasn't that he didn't like school. He loved learning, and he was looking forwards to seeing his classmates, of course. It was something else. His toes felt a little tingly, and he'd left sweaty paw prints inside the sleek pages of the book. For some reason, Prickles was feeling anxious about going back to school. And not just a little bit anxious, a lot. Prickles' mum was sitting on the far side of the library, her nose buried in an anthology of poems. Every so often she tore her eyes away from the beautiful verses in front of her, gazed over at her son, and sighed. She was feeling worried about Prickles. He hadn't seemed himself this past week. His face was pale, and he seemed preoccupied, often gazing solemnly into the distance instead of enthralled by whatever storybook lay open on his lap. She reached for her special bookmark, embroidered with dahlias and daisies, and slipped it between the pages of her poetry book. Leaving her book tucked inside the soft crease of the armchair, she padded across the library floor, past the romance section, brimming with love-struck characters, the detective novels with their intricate and suspenseful whodunit plots, and the vast collection of non-fiction books, where you could find just about any information you might need. As she approached the window seat, Prickles looked up, and she saw that his chocolate-brown eyes weren't as warm as they usually were. They looked a little watery, as if he was holding back tears. "Prickles, darling, whatever is the matter? You look so melancholic sitting gazing out the window." Prickles sniffed and rubbed his eyes hurriedly. "I'm fine," he squeaked, gazing back down at his book and trying his best to look interested. But Prickles' mum knew a fib when she heard one. She climbed up onto the soft cushions of the window seat and nestled in beside him. "What is it, my love? Are you not enjoying the book?" Through tear-soaked eyes, Prickles gazed down at the comical illustration of Anthony the spy, all dressed up in a hilarious disguise. "It's a great book," he replied, doing his best to seem cheerful. But his mouth said otherwise, curling downwards into a frown. Prickles' mum twitched her nose and thought hard. What was making Prickles so very miserable? She tipped her head to the right and pursed her lips. Could he be bored? Usually, Prickles adored the long summer holidays, but perhaps he'd grown restless and was eager to get back to school and see all his classmates. Her eyes gleamed triumphantly. That had to be it. Well, she knew exactly how to help with that. "I know," she sang, her voice echoing brightly around the cavernous library. "Why don't we go back to school shopping? It's almost term time after all, and I bet you're sick of spending your days cooped up at home. You're missing your school friends. It's totally natural." But Prickles shook his head vigorously. "Oh no, I'm perfectly happy here. I love being home. It's actually—" But Prickles' mum interrupted with a cheerful chuckle. "That's ever so sweet of you to say, Prickles. But I know you're raring to get back to Sleepy Forest Elementary. Listen, how's about we take a trip to Evergreen tomorrow? Just you and me. We'll get you all kitted out for the new school year. Don't you worry." Prickles paused. Evergreen was a huge department store right in the heart of Sleepy Forest, and Prickles, normally, loved to wander around the floors with his mum, gazing at all the new, shiny things on display. Usually, he would have been over the moon at the prospect of a trip to Evergreen, but somehow the mere mention of the new school year was making his skin begin to itch. "Oh, it's okay, Mum. We don't need to." "Nonsense." His mum nudged his shiny pink nose lovingly with her own. "We can look at the stationery, find you some new school shoes, wander round the sports department. It'll be great fun. I've got a few things to get done tomorrow morning, but we'll set off right after lunch, okay?" Prickles nodded and tried to force a smile, but he couldn't help feeling glum still. It seemed that no matter what he said or did, the summer holidays were rapidly drawing to a close. As promised, after enjoying a tasty lunch of leek and potato soup and hot buttered rolls, Prickles and his mum set off for the department store in their cheerful yellow car. His mum switched on the radio, and together they sang along to jaunty pop songs as they cruised along the open roads. Before long, they spotted the shimmering roof of Evergreen, sparkling in the distance under the sun's strong rays. "Evergreen," breathed Prickles, delighted by the beautiful image on the horizon. "Here we are," sang his mother as they pulled up in the busy car park, hopped out of the car, setting off towards the emerald dome ahead. Prickles dawdled behind slightly, his tummy twinging as if he'd swallowed a punnet of unripe plums. "Come on, Prickles." His mother stretched out a paw to her little son, who trailed behind her. "Don't be shy. You usually love back-to-school shopping. Now, where shall we go first?" As they entered the smart revolving doors of Evergreen, Prickles felt the wobbles in his tummy subside a little. The air hung heavy with the delicious scent of peppermint candy and pistachio ice cream, and the floor tiles gleamed in a dizzying constellation of jade, emerald, and teal. In the center of the store stood a spiral staircase, cast in ornate iron, leading to other floors, all of which were full of delights. For a brief moment, Prickles forgot to be nervous and gazed in wonder at the spectacular sights around him. Rows and rows of shiny new toys, each one beckoning him closer. His gaze travelled across the toy department, falling first on the latest computer games, then skimming over to the enormous BMX bikes with their monstrous tyres, past rocking horses and inflatable water slides, cricket sets and basketball hoops, until it finally settled on a shining fleet of toy cars. "I know," his mother's voice came bounding very suddenly into his consciousness, like an alarm disturbing his dreamlike reverie. "School shoes first." Up on the third floor, Prickles tried to muster up some enthusiasm as he and his mum gazed up at the impressive array of school shoes on the wall in front of them. A young shop assistant in a bottle green suit made his way over to them eagerly. "Are you in need of some help?" he asked brightly, gesturing at the plentiful collection of shoes. "I know back-to-school shopping can be a little daunting, with so many lovely pairs to choose from. How's about we get you measured first, little man?" He smiled down at Prickles kindly. Prickles blushed and gazed at the floor. "Oh, yes, that's a great idea. I'm sure you'll have grown since last year, Prickles." Prickles' mum ushered him over to the machine, and the shop assistant helped him climb up onto its surface and place his paws in the dedicated spots. "Now keep very still and be sure not to scrunch up your toes," instructed the shop assistant. "It's very important your new shoes are roomy and comfortable." Prickles gazed down at the sensors under his feet. He had to admit it was pretty cool, a machine that told you exactly what size shoes you needed to buy. "Excellent," sang the shop assistant. "You kept very still indeed. Well done. Now, I'll go grab a few pairs in the right size and you can try them on, okay?" A few moments later, Prickles was plodding happily up and down the shop floor, gazing at his reflection in the mirror in wonder. The new shoes the shop assistant had picked out for him were ultra cool. He was totally and utterly spoiled for choice. First, he tried on a pair of sturdy lace-up boots, perfect for stomping his way through Sleepy Forest. The laces were rainbow-striped. The sole was a glittering golden colour, and they made him feel like an adventurer from a storybook. Next, he tried a soft pair of sneakers in bright, dazzling white. They had Velcro fasteners so you could slip them on and off ultra quickly, and the soles lit up and flashed with each footstep. Perfect for walking home from school in the winter, when the late afternoon sky was dark and gloomy. Lastly, he pulled on the most terrific pair of cowboy boots, caramel in colour, with a sparkling silver badge on the side and a thick Cuban heel. "What do you think?" he asked his mum eagerly, his eyes shining brighter than ever. Prickles' mum laughed. "I think you look marvellous," she smiled. "I like them all, whichever you think are best for school." At the mention of school, Prickles' tummy did another little somersault. But this time he didn't feel anxious. He imagined himself striding into class in his brand new cowboy boots, and he felt deliciously excited. "Could I please have the cowboy boots, Mum?" he whispered, his eyes round with anticipation. "As long as they're comfy and they fit you well, then yes," his mum nodded her approval. "I think they're very smart indeed." The shop assistant winked at Prickles. "An excellent choice," he trilled, and scooped up the beautiful leather boots into his arms. "I'll take these over to the till for you, shall I?" Moments later, Prickles was happily swinging an enormous shopping bag from his paw, a smile tickling the edges of his mouth. He was delighted with his purchase. "Where to next?" he piped. His mother smiled. This was more like it. Prickles seemed so much brighter now, so much more carefree and high-spirited, so much more himself. "What about the stationery section?" his mother suggested. She knew how much Prickles loved picking out a new pencil case each year and filling it with brand new felt-tip pens, sharpened pencils, novelty erasers, and scented gel pens. Prickles' spines bristled in anticipation. "Oh, yes," he breathed, tugging at his mum's paw impatiently and tottering down the stairs 2 at a time. Prickles' mum laughed, delighted to see her son so invigorated. "You always have loved back-to-school shopping," she sighed nostalgically. There it was again. That word that had driven so many butterflies into Prickles' belly with their flapping wings and quivering antennae. But as Prickles entered the stationery section and gazed at the multitude of pencil cases in front of him, he couldn't help but feel a warm glow take the place of his anxiety. He stepped forwards, his paws reaching towards a bright red, furry pencil case with a shiny apple charm dangling from the zip. "Wow," he murmured. "I love this one." The fur felt so soft and cosy in his paws that his stomach stopped lurching about with nerves and settled down into a comforting stillness. Prickles' mum helped him pick out some new pens and pencils to go inside the furry red pencil case, and very soon they had filled another shopping bag full of back-to-school supplies. They stood together, each holding an emerald green shopping bag close to their chest, smiling triumphantly. "Well, we've done very well, Prickles. Brand new boots and a fabulous pencil case. I think this calls for a celebration, don't you?" Her eyes wandered towards the ground floor cafe, with its sparkling silverware and gleaming white crockery. Prickles' face melted into a dreamy grin. "Do you mean?" He could barely get the words out. He was feeling so hopeful. "I sure do. If you ask me, it's time for an ice cream sundae to mark the end of the summer holidays." Prickles and his mum shared a cheeky smile. They were both great fans of ice cream, and the sundaes in the Evergreen cafe were just heavenly. Prickles tried not to think about the end of the summer holidays, and instead began to fantasize about hot chocolate sauce, shavings of caramelized pecans, thick dollops of whipped cream, candied apricots, delicate wafers, and gleaming glacé cherries. His tongue snuck out of his mouth without permission, and he licked his lips. "Yes, please," he squeaked, forgetting all about his stomachache from before, and thinking only of the delicious ice cream sundae waiting for him downstairs. Prickles and his mum were soon seated at a sweet little table with a checkered tablecloth in the corner of Evergreen's cafe. Their shopping bags were safely stowed underneath their chairs, and a towering sundae sat in the middle of the table for them to share. Prickles dug in enthusiastically, loading his spoon up with a mouth-watering mixture of chopped banana, butterscotch sauce, rainbow sprinkles, and edible glitter. His mother watched him pensively, her head tipped to the side, her eyes a little glazed. "What's up, Mum?" asked Prickles through an enormous mouthful. "Oh, nothing, Pet. I'm just glad to see you happy. You've seemed a little distant these past few days. Has anything been the matter, Prickles?" Prickles stopped digging for chocolate truffles and sat back, licking the cream from his spoon delicately. "Well, I guess I've been feeling a bit funny. You see, whenever I thought about going back to school, I got this strange feeling in my tummy." His mother leaned forwards. "What sort of a feeling?" she inquired worriedly. Prickles began picking at a wafer, breaking it up into little crumbs and scattering them on his napkin. "It was sort of like butterflies dancing around, flapping their wings and making me feel all nervous. Prickles' mum stroked her son's paw, her eyes shining with empathy. Oh, Honeypot, it's totally normal to feel anxious, especially with a new school term ahead. Prickles nodded, and it just felt like such a shame, he continued. You know, with the summer holidays ending and all. It felt really sad. Now we have to wait a whole year for summer to arrive. Prickles' mum smiled. But think of all the wonderful holidays we'll have before then, Prickles. There's Thanksgiving and Hanukkah and Passover too. Prickles' mind filled with images of challah bread, chocolate gelt and honey cake. His mum was right. There was so much to look forward to, so much to enjoy in between. And you'll love to see your friends again, won't you? Prickles thought of his classmates from Sleepy Forest Elementary School. He thought first of Daphne the duckling and wondered if her feathers had changed colour over the holidays. He thought of Eleonora the baby elk, who had spent the summer back in Sweden and was bound to have lots of wonderful stories to share. And he thought of his two best friends, Coco and Camo. He thought of how much fun they would have, the new year stretching out ahead of them, full of promise. He thought of how many adventures they'd go on, how many new things they'd learn in class, how many break times they'd spend trading cards or playing hide and seek. Prickles' face opened up into a bright, beaming, beautiful smile. You're right, Mum, he said, picking up his spoon and digging back into the indulgent ice cream sundae with renewed gusto. Now that you mention it, I actually can't wait for term to start. There's so much to look forward to after all. Prickles' mum sighed in relief and smiled over at her son proudly. She took her spoon in her paw and dug heartily into the ice cream sundae, savouring the sweet, icy taste of vanilla and hazelnut, adding a generous dollop of chocolate sauce to each spoonful. Before long, the two of them were scraping the sides of the sundae glass and licking their spoons to catch every last drop. A yawn escaped Prickles' mouth, and his mum smiled. Time to head home, I think. Prickles nodded sleepily, and they padded out together into the parking lot. Thanks for today, Mum. I love my new cowboy boots and my red furry pencil case with the little apple dangling from the zip. And I love that ice cream too. Prickles' mum helped him climb up into the back seat of the car and fasten his seatbelt securely. I'm glad, Prickles. You're most welcome. And I'm glad you opened up about how you've been feeling too. That's very brave, and I'm very proud of you. As their car trundled along the highway, Prickles felt the soft vibrations of the motor engine lulling him into a deep slumber. As his head began to nod and his eyelids to flutter, he slipped away into the most beautiful dream, striding into school in his new cowboy boots. grinning ear to ear with his best friends, Coco and Camo, right beside him. Now we're floating into a deep and peaceful sleep. Feel how your muscles are relaxing. Your arms are heavy and your legs are too, as they loosen and release any tension remaining from the day. Feel how you let your body fall into the cozy warmth of your bed. Close your eyes. Let your eyelids be heavy. Breathe deeply. Breathe in and out. Breathe in and out as you continue to breathe deeply, and as you keep feeling how your body becomes soft and heavy with sleep. Let your mind drift away. That is the wonderful secret about sleep. While your body rests, lying heavily in your bed, your mind is set free, like a bird taking flight from a branch and flying up and up and up into the air. Feel how your mind loosens now, like a balloon that has been untied from a fence, and floats up and up and up like a bird. Up and up and up it floats towards the sky, until it reaches up into the clouds. Imagine that you have risen up high above the world and your head has poked up through the clouds. Then spread out all around you in the silvery moonlight, white fluffy clouds that look like cotton wool or marshmallows. They look so soft and squishy. You can lie back on them and roll around in them. Try it now. Lie back in the soft cradle of the clouds. Feel how they swirl and wrap around your body, holding you gently in the world of sleep. Clouds come in all shapes and sizes. Some are big and fluffy, some are slender wisps. Some look like puffy mushrooms, and others look like paintbrush strokes that have been left on the dark sky. Let your body relax. Let your mind relax too. Let your mind float off into sleep. You are peaceful. You are safe. You are being held in the cozy warmth of sleep. With your eyes closed, let your mind drift up, up, up and away. In the world of dreams, you can go anywhere you like. You can float on blue oceans with ripples and tufts of waves. Or you can visit castles built in the sky with spiraling turrets and drawbridges over sparkling moats. Or you can wander into the peaceful woods where the birds are twittering and the trees are dense with dark green leaves. Breathe in and out. Breathe in and out again as you fall more deeply into your cozy sleep. And with your eyes still closed, take a look around with your mind at where your dreams have taken you. When I fall asleep, I dream that I've gone to a world high up in the clouds. Sometimes the clouds are dappled silver from the moonlight. Sometimes they're soft pink and gold, reflecting the light of the twinkling stars. What form do your dreams take? Where does your mind go when you fall asleep? Maybe in your dreams there are flocks of white fluffy sheep huddling together on the green fields. Look at the mother ewe yawn widely before she tucks her little lambs beneath her woolly fleece. Or maybe you dream of a friendly dragon, curled up with his tail wrapped around him, a little trail of clouds puffing out of his nostrils. Look, the cloud dragon is smiling at us and waving. What a friendly dragon he is. Or maybe you dream of cute puppies lying on their backs, their tongues lolling out of their mouths, their eyes closing because they've had such a long day. They look tired, and there's their papa dog, fluffy and white, padding softly over to wish the puppies good night. Up here on the sea of clouds, you can be free. Feel how light you are, weightless, floating, drifting through sleep. Feel everything heavy from the day lift off you and drift away, taken away by currents until they disappear over the bank of clouds. Any worries you have been having, watch them float away. Anything that has been weighing on your mind during the daytime, now you can let them go and watch them drift away. Your worries are not you. You are not your worries. You can let them go. Watch them float away. Now you are light as air. You are as gentle as starlight. You are as soft as the clouds. Up in the sleepy sky, everything is weightless and peaceful. The clouds stretch out like a sea of tranquility. Close your eyes and feel the clouds wrap around you. Feel them bearing your body gently into the land of sleep. Feel your eyes close. Feel them rest heavily as your body relaxes into sleep. Feel your mind lighten. Feel it loosen and drift away, light as a feather, soft as the clouds. Breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. The world of clouds is waiting for you. Let yourself fall into the clouds' soft, warm hug. They are here to protect you. They are here to cushion you. They are here to hold you as you enjoy your deep and peaceful sleep. Sleep well, little one. Sleep well in the land of clouds. Feel how light you are. Feel how weightless, floating, drifting through sleep, light as air, gentle as starlight, soft as clouds. Good night, little one.